liberty and justice for all.
Are there any modifications to the agenda this morning? Okay, well, we'll go to the discussion items. Item 1 on the discussion agenda is the LG&E KU Network Operating Agreement. This is the agreement we've had since we've been in the power market. It's a requirement, and there have been some amendments to it. And if you've got any questions, Tim will be happy to go over those. But I think it's
We'll make a motion to accept. Second.
Any discussion?
So the only changes were in appendix A.
Yeah, we can say that's where most of the changes came from. Pretty much it's the same operating guide we've utilized since 2020.
I think you said, Pat, you had reviewed this entire
Yes.
16-page document, and you did find
You got everything.
everything's good. Everything's good.
For the discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
our next item. The next couple items are related. This is our incentive compensation program. As you know, we've had for the last 2 fiscal years an incentive compensation program, whereas we have taken our pool of our annual increase and divided it into a pool for a lump sum incentive compensation program, and then as the other part of it for our, what we call our annual wage increase or structural increase. So we're proposing that the performance incentive program, that we suspend that program while we look at what best fits OMU as far as a performance incentive program going forward. But for fiscal 19, as we prepare that budget, we are requesting that we suspend that, and then we have some options for what we do with the current fiscal 19 that's already been approved in the budget. And I'd like to let Michael kind of run over that with you, if it's okay.
We put 3 options in the memo. Basically, the 0.75% equates to about $130,000. But option number 1 is we take the program like we do today, and we evaluate and rank OMU employees, and we distribute the $130,000 or the 0.75% of base payroll in lump sum payments, similar to exactly what we did the last 2 fiscal years. Option number 2 is that we take the 0.75 for any employee that's eligible, take the 0.75 of the base and give them a one-time lump sum payment. The third option is we grant all eligible OMU employees 0.75% to their base salary. We are recommending option number 3, and there's a few reasons that we outlined in the memo, but basically when you take the general wage increase pool, which is more of wage inflation, and then you take it out and give some of it as lump sum and some of it towards the base, you're losing a little bit towards the market. And so basically, what we're looking at is we showed a gap of about 3.44% over the last 2.5 years. We're not asking for the 3.44%. We're asking for the 0.75 to go towards the base, and it takes care of about 20% of that problem. And so we thought that would be a way that if we wanted to suspend the program and redesign or look at it at a later date, what would you do with those funds? We're recommending that you add it to the base salary. Any questions or comments from staff or commission at this time?
I certainly don't want option 1, and I'm open to 2 or 3, but if you do option 3, it impacts what I'd be willing to do on the compensation you're getting ready to bring up.
A general wage increase, correct?
So either, I mean, if you want to go option 3, well, then I'd be less likely to approve an amount of the base rate increase compensation.
I think we'd still recommend option 3.
Do you think we have the funds in the budget to cover this?
We do.
Oh, it's in the budget.
It's in this.
This part's already in.
This part's already in this year's budget.
Yeah, I'm talking about the next year.
Well, we will budget that. We've included our preliminary budget, I think a 3% placeholder, which would include this going forward.
To me, one of the first questions is why suspend the incentive compensation program? I haven't heard any negatives from any of the staff 3 years I've been on the commission about it. So why all of a sudden, when our previous CEO, who's the one that came up with this, first meeting that he's not here, we're hearing that this needs to be kicked out the door. So I'm kind of, that's the first question for me is, why should we get rid of this program when it looks like if you look at the bottom line the last few years, when you look at what you budget, we always come in on top. We've been in the plus side, we haven't been in the red. So what is wrong with the program?
I'll answer as honestly as I can. I have not thought from day one that it was a good fit for OMU. However, you know, that was Terry's initiative, and my job as his subordinate was to support that, and we did. We did the best job we could with it. I do not believe that the form that we had, where we used effectively a bell curve and used the tools that we have in our performance management program to drive the performance incentive program, there was a lot of subjectivity into it. It was a way to award some people. I just don't think it's a good fit for a municipal utility. I don't think if you polled our employees, which I've talked to a lot of employees, the employees, I can't speak for everyone, I've talked to everyone, but I've gotten feedback. I had an employee meeting this morning and got universal feedback from about 15 employees. They do not like it. They don't think it, they agree with, I think, what Michael said and what I said. I don't think it drives enhanced performance or better performance from our employees. In some cases, because they see some of the subjectivity in it, it actually drives some negative behaviors. So I don't think it's a good program.
But it's probably just been there for a couple of years, and I don't know if that was really long enough to get a good feeling about how, that was where my.
Well, now, I may be wrong here, but I thought we gave directions at our 2-day work session to review the program, and we didn't like it.
You did.
I thought we had told them to review it, because we didn't feel, I didn't, I mean, I remember a pretty good discussion on it at that 2-day work session, and the result of that, they were gonna review it and see how effective they thought it was.
And yet, we haven't heard anything about that review until now.
So I'll be honest with you, that review didn't happen until now. And when we talk about suspending it, we're not saying that OMU shouldn't have a performance incentive program going forward. Michael and I think, and folks on the leadership team can speak up if they disagree or agree. We don't believe this is the right program for OMU. And I don't believe it's driven, it in and of itself has driven the positive improvements in performance that we'd like to see from our employees. In some cases, it's made some it's had some negative impact.
From what I could tell, the formulation of it, the way it was applied, had a problem also. Whether you're applying it to a group of 5 people or a group of 20 people.
Yeah.
Using a bell curve, it just does not match.
It's hard to put, you know, if you've got a staff of 5 people or 3 people to fit a bell curve. And that's the structure of it. So I think we're saying we'd like to have some time and come back to you for fiscal 20 to say, here's our recommendation on a new revised performance incentive program and kind of come up with what that should be. The one that we have now, which is heavily based on metrics that sometimes were difficult to measure and difficult for an employee to understand how this metric affects, how I can affect this metric with my performance. You know, and I don't want to denigrate the work that Terry did. I just think it's not a good fit for us, and I think the last 2 years have shown that it needs to be revised. And I don't know that we've had time to come up with a replacement for it. So my recommendation, I very strongly recommend that we suspend it, as we said, for this fiscal year, and that we look at what fits for OMU for the next fiscal year.
For the present fiscal year we're in now.
Well, for the fiscal year upcoming, we would be structuring the metrics and everything in this fiscal year for fiscal 19, the upcoming fiscal year. So we would not have that for fiscal 19, and when we're preparing for fiscal 20, both budget-wise and planning for fiscal 20, we'd come back to you and say, this is the type of incentive compensation program we would recommend.
Yeah, but let me ask you, when I asked about the budget, I was looking at the preliminary fiscal budgets that you did, and in most of those, we got to raise rates next year. So that's why I asked you if we had the money, because we don't have the money without raising rates, right?
We don't have the money to do a lot of things without raising rates.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's true.
And this is going to cost how much about?
Approximately $130,000.
this particular piece.
And it's in this fiscal year's budget.
And for next fiscal year, I think when we get to that presentation, the total proposed rate increase, pay increase was about $557,000.
I'd like to make a motion to accept option 2. As we go through these options and get them on.
Well, is there any way possible just to take in consideration this and the next one?
I think, I think your suggestion is if you,
Because if you increase the base, well, then it has an impact on what I'd be willing to do in the next thing.
yeah,
If you
my
look-
preference would be if you're looking, and I think it's a valid approach to look at them in total. My preference would be to do option 3 now and then reduce, talk about reducing the total in the next memo, in the next presentation. I think that would be what I would prefer, as opposed to the lump sum in option 2.
I second Mr. Lawley's motion.
You don't second that motion?
Which is
That's
One
one
time
make a
on the
motion.
second. I withdraw the motion.
You're withdrawing it, okay?
I'm withdrawing it so we can combine it with the other agenda part of the general wage recommendation.
Well, let's do this, let's review the next one, then we can
Okay.
come back if we want to vote on
That makes
separately,
sense.
or we can do a combination.
That makes
The other
sense.
thing to point out on this is you mentioned that you're 3% behind because of this, but you left out the fact that money was given out every year.
Yes,
People
and
got
one-time
that
lump
money.
sum.
They didn't get in their base pay,
Yes.
but they did get paid.
But you-
So you're sort of leaving out one little part of that.
Well,
too.
This is accounted for. That 3.44% is accounting for your one-time lump sums. You're still 3.44% behind the market, counting your lump sums that you get every year.
On the base pay line, but those people still got that money still was paid out. It
And
still
that is-
cost OMU ratepayers
You are correct.
to pay people for that.
But that yellow you see there is including of those one-time lump sums. And basically what we're saying with some of that is that it's not compounded year over
Yeah.
year because it's a one-time lump sum,
That's
so
right.
you lose money.
I
I'd
know.
rather have 2.5% on my base pay
It's
than
10%. It makes you
1.5.
feel like, well, we're not.
Well,
That didn't- it could have been
We actually
clear.
didn't pay that
another
money
thing
out.
it does too is for years we called this a pay structure movement, this annual increase. Because when we strip part of it out and give it a base pay, yeah, the employees get the one-time payment, that's for sure. But our pay structure moves less than it would have. So newer employees coming in we're competing at a lower pay rate than we would have if it had all been a structure movement. So the actual jobs, the classifications year over year are losing ground compared to what they would have been had this all been in a structure movement.
So we're gonna vote just on this fiscal year. Is that right?
This one is for this fiscal year, correct, that incentive compensation is how do we disperse the funds for fiscal year 18? The next memo is more conceptual, how do you want us to assumption or calculate the general wage increases moving forward? We put in the budget for fiscal year 19, 3%. It sounds to me like we're gonna have a conversation on what you want it to be, and then we'll go back and put that into the budget so that we're calculating it.
But you're correct, if we do option 3, it will be embedded in next fiscal year. So it does have ramifications for next fiscal year.
And I'm more concerned about the budget. I think we need to discuss the budget before we talk about adding dollars for next year, because that's a really important issue that we need to discuss.
And I agree. I'll tell you my philosophy on that is, as I said, I think the total that we proposed is about $557,000. And as you guys have seen the budget presentation, we are several millions of dollars a revenue shortfall. I would prefer to make the cuts that we have to make and the adjustments we have to make elsewhere and try to not cut the employees' pay, or not cut the pay, but not have them keep up. So the things that we've done a lot in the past have directly impacted employees by cutting training opportunities and cutting or reducing the amount of their pay increase. My preference would be because employees are the ones that are going to help us solve these issues we've got. My preference was where we have to cut would to be make this the last place that we go, not the first place.
Well, I think it all needs to be discussed.
Absolutely.
Everything needs to be thrown out.
And the other thing about the pay increase, the 0.75, we're asking to go ahead and, at least for this fiscal year, it's budgeted to go ahead and pay it out this fiscal year. Any pay increase that you give us guidance on today, what that percentage is, what we will do is put that into the budget. And when we come back and discuss the budget, you have another opportunity to say, okay, we still don't like that, let's reduce let's adjust that pay increase going forward. So this will not finalize that pay percentage. It'll just give us guidance to what to put in the budget. So when we see the next set of final budget numbers, or not the preliminary, you will have to see how all the pieces are fit together. And then if we decide that, that's still that pay increase is not what we want it to be, still got a chance to adjust it before we finalize the budget, before you approve the budget. So this is not the last time we can discuss this, but this gives us guidance on what to put in our budgets as we go forward with them.
Let me just throw out what I'll be comfortable with. And I understand your supporting employees, and there's nothing we would like better than just, they'll say 2.9 is fine, and I agree with you. But you can't discount what Paul's saying, the impact and what the ratepayers are gonna see this. So here's what I'd be comfortable with is if you go back and you just give the 3/4% as flat compensation, then I'd be willing to go 2 1/4 increase. But if you want to increase that 3/4, that's 0.75 in the base, well, then I would cut this to 2.
Did I hear correctly? If we gave it 0.75% to the base, that you give 2% general wage increase or 2 total?
Additional 2.
Okay.
Or if you put it just straight compensation, I'd be willing additional 2 1/4. That's just out there for discussion.
Well, here's what I propose. I would like to, I think what you said, go ahead and give them the 0.75% in base now and then additional 2. I think that is what we would prefer. Michael's nodding his head. And that's what we could go ahead and budget on. And you have another chance to come back if that 2 is not where you want it. You can move that again before we finalize the budget. But we do that, we give the 0.75% on base pay now. We put the 2 in our round of budget calculations, and we come back with you, and you can see how those affect it. You can see we'll see the dollars, and if we move it, we can show you how it's going to impact what we have to do with either rates or use of reserves.
Well, I'm comfortable with that. I don't know about the rest of the commission. That's just.
So this is just an advisory vote, it's all it is.
The 0.75% was,
Real vote.
we need you to approve that to add to base pay if that's what you choose to do. The 2% is, we'll take that and put it in our budget calculations from here on out. And then when you approve the budget in May, as we get close to that, if you want to adjust that, we can adjust it again. But then you'll get to see not preliminary numbers, but better sets of numbers with that 2% embedded into those numbers.
So your motion is just to.
Kevin, isn't one of the first things we have to do
That's not a
here-
motion, that's just for discussion. We're not comfortable with. We don't make any motions.
One of the first things we have to do is to vote not to have an executive compensation plan.
Yeah,
This
instead of
commission voted
compensation.
in to have one, and the one that we voted in is the one that you've been using.
We're asking you
So
to
then
suspend
doesn't
that.
the commission have to vote that out?
I looked at the way that the policy is worded, and it gives us the authority to either pay that out or not pay it out. Since we're suspending it and not doing away with it, I don't know that we have to go back and modify the policy until we come back to you and say, we think the incentive compensation plan ought to be completely taken out or revised to say this, this, and this, which is different from what's in the policy.
I mean, if we're not gonna follow it this year, which is, you're asking us not to follow it this year.
Actually, the policy says that the general manager can disperse the funds if he feels it's, certain criteria, like financially viable to do it. So he could actually say, this year's policy, if we do nothing today and walk out, he could decide 0 disbursements out of that $130,000. He does not have to give out the monies that are allocated.
And under the policy, under the general manager's authority, the general manager can say, we'll disperse it all equally at 0.75%. What that policy doesn't allow us to do is to add it to base pay.
Or go above and
Or go
beyond
above it.
the $130,000.
So I think your point is well taken. When we finalize what we want to do with performance incentive, we will definitely need to modify the compensation policy. What we're doing now by suspending the payout is, I think, under the authority of the existing policy.
Ted, no, I don't know how the rest of y'all feel about it.
You wanna make your 3/4 motion? And then we'll, go to the next item and talk about the recommendation of 2%.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we add the 0.75 to the base.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
So I think on the next item, we can go ahead and go through it, but I think we've clearly heard that Tony's recommended that we change that to 2% for budgeting purposes. And again, it's not final. You haven't approved it or disapproved it. You've given us guidance. You'll get a chance to look at that as part of finalizing the budget. But certainly, if there's something else you want us to put in the budget for now, we'll do what your guidance is.
Well, I'm not in favor of doing anything until we look at the October budget.
Well,
And I know you just want to put it in there to forecast it, but why don't we put in 0 and then go from there? And if we decide to do something, we can look at 2%. I mean, if not, then maybe we need to prepare a budget with a 0 and a 2. You know?
we can certainly show you what 2 and 0 and any option in between looks like.
Okay.
I feel like since we've been operating this whole year, it'd be better just to give out the lump sum, so that everybody gets it and everybody starts fresh with a new idea and a new plan, knowing where they want for the next year.
The budget the preliminary budget we're gonna talk about a little bit later, it has 3%. Am I right? 3% as a placeholder. We're assuming that that's at your discretion, so, but we put it in there, so we have to have the numbers. So next time around, we can show you what it will be with 2%, what it will be with 0%.
This is what I'd like to see on that. I would like to see it done with the 2% and then just the dollar value of each quarter per percent.
We can do that. I'll say we can do that. We can do that.
We'll figure it out. Who's looking at it?
That way we can quickly adjust it either way we want.
As in the past, you know, there's one year we took, been on, the way OMU was doing, we held off any increases until we met certain metrics as the fiscal year proceeded. You know, we may choose to do that as you know, as part of this process. I don't think you were here, Paul, but one year we were kind of tight. So unless we made certain metrics as far as over, under budget, we didn't have a wage increase. And then once we hit those thresholds, then those kick back in. So when you're in kind of a tight, that's kind of what you do.
Right.
I think it's based on net income.
I think we split it up, and we gave part of it, and then if we met certain financial metrics, by halfway through the fiscal year, then the other was either gonna be awarded, which it was in that case, or not. And that's certainly another option, a way to look at it. So we're open, we'll have, when we come back, we'll talk about the budget in more detail. We will have lots of different numbers to look at and different ways to do it. And we can do the core percentage points and just see the impact on the dollars. So I don't think we need any action I think we've got our direction and we will proceed accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that. The next item is the community investment report, and again, this is an annual report, and it gives you an opportunity to look at that as we were again looking for no decisions, but guidance as far as what we need to include in the budget for these items. And Sonia, are you ready to go?
I'm ready. This is a report that you receive periodically, once a year actually, and so some of this might be new to you, but most of it should be familiar. This year I included kind of a cash outlay chart for you to sort of summarize that, and you can see that there. And that includes $31,600 in donations and sponsorships. Those range from everything to donations to colleges, and there's a list of those in there, to $350 ballpark sign sponsorships. They're kind of all over the place. The United Way match is included in this as well. Those match the employee funds that are donated. Go EDC is listed there. That's at $25,000. The Salvation Army Customer Assistance Program, we budget more funds than that. They only take what they request, and those fluctuate from year to year. Those funds actually, they vet customers that need assistance and assist them, and that's been a very, very effective program for us in that they handle the vetting, they're able to see if someone's receiving from other agencies and those sorts of things. So it's been very beneficial. We have gift certificates up there that's, that we do those sometimes for raffles and things like that that's mentioned. You know, we do some in-kind services. A lot of that comes from telecom and from delivery. And we've enumerated those in there, and that's roughly about $8,000. I don't want to neglect to mention the Community Cares Program, which is what we consider our Salvation Army donation. We also ask our customers if they would like to contribute to that, and we had nearly $1,600 in donations just from customers. You might be familiar with that as a roundup program or an add-on program for other utilities. Just want to also mention, and this is not something that we really put a value to, but we have over 5,000 volunteer hours that are given by our employees throughout the year. I would guess that was almost double. People only report a little bit, and a lot of people don't even report any of those. They want to be anonymous in that. And also something that's been very effective for us in getting out in the community and connecting our employees with the community have been departmental initiatives. And I won't go through all of those, but you have those there. And one that's been ongoing for a long time, it's one of my favorites, is the 4th annual chicken cook for homeless in our community. That's become quite a tradition. There are things like soup day. I know the finance department also led some activities around Christmas for different organizations. So those are all listed there. And those numbers that you see there are what I will reflect in the upcoming budget. There is one change, and Brittany, if you don't mind to go to that first page, sorry, I know you just got down there. I am proposing in the upcoming budget that we reduce the GO EDC donation from $25,000 to $10,000, which is more in